I call it living from the end. This is one of the harder ones for people to get, but I'd like you to go again to the New Testament. Look at Romans 4:17. In the presence of him whom he believed God, who gives life to the dead and calls those things which do not exist as though they did. And calls those things which do not exist as though they did. Those are very important, significant words. You have to be able to call the things which you have not seen yet materialize and manifest into your physical world. You have to be able to say to yourself, I call those things that I would like to become as if they already do. And you place into your imagination fearlessly the I ams which you would like to create for yourself. And when it's time for me to write another book, I don't even know what it's going to be. I just know that it starts germinating inside me. And it's like a calling, it's like a passion. It's as if I call those things, the book does not exist. I call it as if it did. I have a wonderful quote by the man I've cited before. His name is Neville, and it goes like this. He says, disregard appearances, conditions, in fact, disregard all evidence of your senses, that is what your eyes and ears tell you, that deny the fulfillment of your desire, whatever it is you want to attract into your life. Disregard appearances, conditions, in fact, all evidence of your senses that deny the fulfillment of your desire. Rest in the assumption that you already are what you want to be. For in that determined assumption, you and your infinite being, your extraordinary self, which is what this program is about, are merged in creative unity, and with your infinite being, God, all things are possible. God never fails, and you are a piece of that which never fails. And you are going to move beyond just being a piece and just being a fragment and just being a segment until it becomes your overwhelming knowing that you have within you this divine capacity. You don't need evidence of your senses. I wrote a book a few years back. The title of it, I had to get my publisher because they didn't understand it. They called back, they said, I think you got this wrong. I said, no, it's called You'll See It When You Believe It. Not the other way around. People will say, well, I'll believe it when I see it. It doesn't work that way. You'll see it when inside you have a knowing. And Neville also said, therefore, to incarnate a new and a greater value of yourself, you must assume that you already are what you want to be, and then live by faith in this assumption. Now, this flies in the face of so much of what you've been told, because you have a tendency to believe that what your eyes and ears tell you is reality. But this is what we know by our senses. Just this little tiny fragment. I can't even get, it's like a millionth of a millimeter. And all that is unknown is in the invisible, in the imagination. And most of our attention is focused on, this is my beliefs and my disbeliefs about what is possible and what isn't possible are here. And it's an endless universe. So placing I ams into your imagination is one thing. It's an intellectual act. Living from the end means that you call the things which do not exist as if they did. Willingness. How willing are you to attract into your life what you want and to rid yourself of the excuses? The willingness means suspending all of your blame. It means taking total responsibility for everything that is in your life, including the memes that were handed to you by your well-meaning parents and their neighbors and so on. To say, I did it all. It also means surrendering. Willingness means, in the recovery movement, And many of you know that I have been without alcohol now for 20 years plus, and just gave it up. And the reason that I gave it up, and the reason I was able to do it, was through being willing to say, I surrender. I just let go. And what? Let God, right? And allow this divine source. You see, if the ego was in charge of you, then why would you get old? I was sitting in an interview today with Kenny Blanchard, and he's turning 70 and I'm turning 69. And I said, you know, if the ego was really in charge, we wouldn't be sitting here in these 68-year-old bodies. We'd keep it about 23, wouldn't we? Because, you know, that's when we feel that we're the most powerful and when we have, but there's something else that's in charge. And not just in charge of our bodies and its aging, but there's something you have to surrender to that's even bigger than all of us. And you have to be willing to do that, to know that everything that you came here to do is a part of that. Willingness means shedding all things that you're unwilling to do. I remember when I did my very first PBS special back in 1999. And I went around the country and I visited PBS stations in every market. It made no difference to me how many people were there, whether it was a tiny little market or a very large market. Whatever they asked me to do, I said, I have nothing on my unwillingness category. And I made over 170 station visits, very often paying my own expenses and living on a very, very tight budget. But I knew that I wanted to take the messages that I'm speaking about here and that I spoke about in my earlier programs, and there was nothing I was unwilling to do. I did it when Erroneous Zones was published back in 1976. Bought up the first 2 printings, went across the country, paid for my own expenses, 14-hour days doing interviews, whatever it might be. Whatever it takes. Just have that willingness. Virginia Woolf. No one's afraid of her, right? She had a wonderful line. She said, arrange whatever pieces come your way. Whatever it is that comes your way, no matter how tough it may be, whatever, arrange whatever pieces come your way and make it work for you. I'd like to speak for just a moment about passion as a principle for eliminating excuses. Create for yourself the habit of enthusiasm about everything. When I watched the interview with Felipe, who was the guy who was the man on wire, he said, you have to have passion every single day. And what does the word enthusiasm mean? Entheos, God. Yasm, within, in Greek. The God within. That's the meaning of when you have passion for anything inside of you, you are really, that's God speaking to you. If you have total passion for something and you just won't let go of it, regardless of what the circumstances of your life are, you will find a way. The universe will provide you with a way. The strange synchronistic experiences and serendipities that seem to show up, they show up much more frequently and right on time when you're living from a place of passion. No passion? Continue with your excuses. Passion is the creative source inside of you. Walk with it. I do it every day. Hold hands with it. Make it your number one relationship in life, not to your spouse, not to your children, not even to yourself. Make your number one relationship to your source, to God, to that place from which you returned, to which all things return. Live from a place of passion, and you will be guided.
If you view yourself disrespectfully, you've forsaken or cast aside, or at the very least, you've sullied your connection to the power of intention. It's important that you recognize that your entire worldview is based on how much respect you have for yourself. It has nothing to do with what others may think of you. Your self-respect comes from the self, and the self alone. If you fail to respect yourself, you're showing contempt for the process of creation. How do you return to the self in self-respect? Well, rather than judging those who judge you, thereby lowering your self-respect, send them a silent blessing of forgiveness, and imagine them doing the same toward you. You're connecting to intention and guaranteeing that you'll always respect the divinity that you are. You've cleared the path to be able to enjoy the great power that is yours in that field of intention. 10 ways or 10 steps to practice nurturing your intention to respect yourself at all times. Here's step 1. Look into a mirror. Make eye connection with yourself and say, I love me, as many times as possible during your day. I love me. These 3 magic words help you maintain your self-respect. Your immediate impulse might be to see this as an expression of your ego's desire to be superior to everyone else, but this is not an ego statement at all. It's an affirmation of self-respect. Transcend that ego mind and affirm your love for yourself and your connection to the Spirit of God. This doesn't make you superior to anyone. It makes you equal to all and celebrates that you're a piece of God. Affirm it in order to be respectful of that which intended you here. Affirm it because it's the way you're going to stay connected to your source and regain the power of intention. I love me. Say it proudly and be that image of love and self-respect. Step 2. Write the following affirmation and repeat it over and over again to yourself. I am whole and perfect as I was created. Carry this thought with you wherever you go. Have it laminated and placed in your pocket or on your dashboard or on your refrigerator or even next to your bed. Allow the words to become a source of high energy and self-respect. By simply carrying these words with you and being in the same space with them, their energy will flow directly to you. Over and over, remind yourself, I'm not my body, I'm not my accumulations, I'm not my achievements, I'm not my reputation. I am whole and perfect as I was created. Step 3. Extend more respect to others and to all of life. Perhaps the greatest secret of self-esteem is to appreciate other people more. The easiest way to do this is to see the unfolding of God in them. Look past the judgments of others' appearances, failures and successes, their status in society, their wealth or their lack of it, and extend appreciation and love to the source from which they came. Everyone is a child of God. Everyone. Remember, when you judge another, you do not define them. You define yourself as someone who needs to judge. The same applies to judgments directed at you. Step 4. Affirm to yourself and all others that you meet, I belong. A sense of belonging is one of the highest attributes on Abraham Maslow's pyramid of self-actualization. Feeling that you don't belong or you're in the wrong place can be due to a lack of self-respect. Respect yourself and your divinity by knowing that everyone belongs. This should never come into question. Your presence here in this universe is proof alone that you belong here. The wisdom of creation intended you to be here, in this place, in this family, with these siblings and parents, occupying this precious space in this time. Say it to yourself and say it over and over again. I belong, and so does everyone else. No one is here by accidents. There are no accidents in this universe. Step 5. Remind yourself that you're never alone. My self-respect stays intact as long as I know that it's impossible for me to be alone. I have what I call a senior partner who's never abandoned me and who stuck with me even in moments when I had seemingly deserted my source. I feel that if the universal mind has enough respect to allow me to come here and to work through me and to protect me in times when I strayed onto dangerous non-spiritual turf, then this very partnership deserves my reciprocal respect. Step 6. Respect your body. You've been provided with a perfect body to house your inner invisible being for a few brief moments in eternity. Regardless of its size or shape or color or any imagined infirmities, it's a perfect creation for the purpose that you were intended here for. You don't need to work at getting healthy. Health is something you already have if you don't disturb it. You can begin the fulfillment of this intention to live a life of self-respect by honoring the temple that houses you. Go within, listen to your body, and treat it with all of the dignity and love that your self-respect demands. Step 7. Meditate. Always meditate to stay in conscious contact with your source, which always respects you. I can't say this enough. Meditation is a way to experience what the 5 senses can't detect. When you're connected to the field of intention, you're connected to the wisdom that's within you. The divine wisdom has great respect for you, and it cherishes you while you're here. Regardless of all that goes on around you, when you enter into that sacred space of meditation, all doubts about your value as an esteemed creation dissolve. You'll emerge from the solemnity of meditation feeling connected to your source and enjoying respect for all beings, particularly yourself. Step 8. Make amends with adversaries. The act of making amends sends out a signal of respect for your adversaries. By radiating this forgiveness energy outward, you'll find this same kind of respectful, positive energy flowing back toward you. If you're filled with rage toward anyone, there's a huge part of you that resents the presence of this debilitating energy. Take a moment right here and now to simply face that person who stands out in your mind as someone you hurt or directed hurt towards you, and tell him or her that you'd like to make amends. You'll notice how much better you feel. The good feeling of having cleared the air is self-respect. It takes much more courage and strength of character and inner conviction to make amends than it does to hang on to the low energy feelings. Step 9. Always remember the self in self-respect. In order to do this, you must recognize that the opinions of others towards you aren't facts, they're opinions. When I speak to an audience of 500 people, there are 500 opinions of me in the room at the end of the evening. I'm none of those opinions. I can't be responsible for how they view me. The only thing I can be responsible for is my own character, and this is true for every single one of us. If I respect myself, then I'm relying on the self in self-respect. And finally, step 10. Always be in a state of gratitude. Be an appreciator rather than a depreciator of everything that shows up in your life. Thank you, God, for everything. When you become aligned, your thoughts are no longer focused on what you don't want, but rather on what you intend to manifest as a co-creator with Source. The best way to begin retraining your mind is to consciously think in aligned ways, so consider the following. Your universal source of being never thinks in terms of what is missing. Do you? It never thinks in terms of what it can't have or do. Do you? It never thinks in terms of what has never happened before. Do you? It never thinks in terms of what others will think, say, or do. Do you? It never thinks in terms of bad luck or the way things have always been. Do you? Every time you have a thought that extends to a conversation with others about what is missing, what shortages you have, your bad luck, what always has been, how others don't understand you, and so forth, you're practicing a misaligned excuses mentality. But remember that your mission is to shift into the action state of realigning. It's my contention that the universe not only will but must provide you with what you conceive of. So if you complain about what's missing from your life, including the money that you believe to be in short supply, you'll be offered experiences that match that energy. When you say, I love my job, but I'll never get rich at it, you're aligning with a frequency that will give you what you think. That is why I believe the rich often get richer. It's certainly been true for me since I left poverty behind some 60 years ago. By staying focused on what I intend to create, by believing that the universe is all providing, and by knowing that I'm worthy of the unlimited beneficence of the source of being, I just keep attracting prosperity to myself. And by being unattached to what shows up, I'm able to let it go easily. What remains a mystery to so many remains a simple truth to me. Stay in a state of gratitude and let the awesome yet unexplainable Tao proceed to do nothing and yet leave nothing undone. Focus on what you have and how thankful you are for everything that has shown up in your life. To that end, keep in mind a happiness index that was recently taken for different countries around the world. It turns out that Nigeria, which is one of the poorest of nations with the least modern of conveniences, came in at number 1 for reports of happiness among the people there. The U.S. ranked 46th out of 50, despite having one of the highest standards of living in the world. Apparently, the emphasis in Nigeria isn't on the mantra of the ego, the idea of shortage, lack, and I don't have enough. Thinking alignment at all times. When you're thinking about the principle of alignment, keep in mind that source energy is ever present, and that you always have the power to bring yourself into harmony with who you really are. And who you really are is a higher awareness than your earthbound form. Just this simple idea, that you're not an ego-based self, but rather divine energy in physical form, will help readjust your energy. Once you recognize your divinity, you'll shift out of misaligned thought patterns. Such thinking focuses on what's wrong or missing, what others have told you are your limitations, what always has been, what used to be, and so on. Since everything comes in response to the vibration of energy, shift out of the lower vibrations and into the vibration of Source. It's already here. I just need to connect to it. Nothing can stop my creative ideas from materializing. I've banished all doubt. I'll soon be seeing evidence of my manifestations everywhere. Now this is a new kind of thinking. While it may sound too simplistic and naive for you, I'm encouraging you, as strongly as I know how, to give this retraining of your mind a chance. Note that the strength of non-physical energy is flowing everywhere. It's in you, but it's also in every tree, every flower, every bug, every planet, and everything that you want to attract to your life. The non-physical energy is pure, positive oneness, which only your thoughts can disconnect from or misalign with. It flows everywhere at once, and it's always creating, always loving, and always animating life. The only thing that keeps it from working for you is a belief that it can't, it won't, or it never has before. In other words, your excuses. The tremendous value of noticing the alignment of your thoughts will rapidly appear in your awareness. You can summon source energy whenever you slip into a misalignment. Just return to possibilities, manifestations, and your own sense of feeling good, which is just another way of feeling the presence of God. When you find it difficult to move into this alignment attitude, put more attention on your feeling self concerning your desires. For example, if that same old shortage of money surfaces, you may find that you can't stop yourself from being upset about the fact that you still believe that more cash would be your proof that this is working. Try something different and let the energy of what you're feeling reveal what's blocking your alignment. Even if you have to borrow a few $100s just to carry around with you and get the sensation of abundance, feeling prosperous, safe, secure, and positive concerning the flow of money will gradually align you with an abundant source. This has been my way since I was a little boy. I've attracted money into my life because I've always felt prosperous and deserving. That feeling motivated me to act, and I loved carrying groceries or collecting soda pop bottles or mowing lawns. My little bank account was growing while my brothers and friends spoke so often about not having enough cash. Today I'm still mowing lawns and collecting soda pop bottles, only on a much larger stage. And prosperity has never failed to flow into my life. I know in my heart of hearts that the journey from despair to hope and on to prosperity and abundance can be achieved with realigned thinking. I know because I've done it for a lifetime. And I trusted this under circumstances where it never could have been predicted that I'd emerge with unlimited prosperity as my calling card. No one else can do this alignment or realignment exercise for you. You must decide to stay in the feeling of love, prosperity, wellness, or whatever you desire, and let that feeling just flow through you. And remember that you get what you think about, whether you want it or not. Remain thoughtfully in the field of infinite possibilities rather than your negative emotions. Fear, worry, hate, and shame are indicators of separation from your authentic self in the present moment. When you come back to your authentic self, it will work full-time to deliver to you whatever you think about. Silently repeat the following. I get what I think about, and I'm choosing from here on in to think in harmony with my source of being until it is habitual. This is called alignment.
So the bottom of this scale is 20. It's the very lowest thought that you can have. And it will always weaken you. Not only will it weaken you, but it will ultimately destroy you, such as its weakness. It's, at 20, it's shame. So if you are using shame on yourself, or you're using shame as a way of parenting or working with others, what you are doing is you are always using an emotional energy that will weaken. The emotion that accompanies shame is called humiliation. And the life view is one of misery, and the God view, the view of God, is one of despising. God despises us. We are ashamed. There's something wrong with us. The next level up, which is very, very low and will always weaken you, is 30, is guilt. Feeling guilty. The emotion that accompanies it is blame. The God view is one of God as vindictive. God is punishing. And the life view is one of life is evil. There's something wrong with life. The next level up is one that's called 50. And this level is the emotion that accompanies that is despair. so that apathy and despair go together. The God view is one of God as condemning, and the life view is that life is hopeless. There's not much that we can do. The next level up is 75, which still weakens us. It's grief. The emotion is regret. God's view is disdainful, and the life view is one of tragic. Life is tragic. We are now moving to 100, which is called fear. And the emotion that accompanies fear is anxiety. The God view is one of punitive, God is punishing, and life view, frightening. Life is frightening. Now we move up to 125, what he calls desire. And the emotion that accompanies that is craving, always wanting to get someplace else. The life view is one of life is disappointing. And the God view is denial, denying. Now we move to 150. We are still at emotions and thoughts that you have that will weaken you. At 150, the emotion that accompanies it is hate. The life view is that life is antagonistic. And the God view is that God is vengeful. We are now moving closer to that which will strengthen us, to something called pride. Pride. And the emotion that accompanies pride is called scorn. The life view is that life is very demanding. And the God view is that God is indifferent. Doesn't care one way or the other. Now we move to 200. We are now making a distinction between being able to recognize truth from falsehood. This is called courage. And the emotion that accompanies courage is affirmation, affirming, life is affirming. The life view is that it is feasible. And the God view is that God is permitting. God allows us. All right. Now we move to 250. We are now talking about emotions and thoughts which strengthen us. At 250, trust is the emotion. Neutrality is the level of thought. The life view is life is satisfactory, and that the view of God is that God is enabling. God enables us. We move now to 310, what he calls willingness. Willingness. Whereas the emotion of willingness is something called optimism, an optimistic view of life. The life view is that life is hopeful, and the God view is that God is inspiring. Now we have moved from God being despising and vindictive and punitive and vengeful and indifferent and permitting and enabling to now God is inspiring. At 350, acceptance, the emotion is forgiveness. I accept and I forgive. The life view is that life is harmonious, and the God view is that God is merciful. Mercy. We now move to 400, where very, very few people ever get to, called reason. The emotion of reason is understanding. The life view is that life is meaningful. There's a meaning to all of this. And the God view is that God is not only merciful and inspiring, but God is wise. Wisdom comes with knowing God. Now we move to 500, which we're talking about a handful of people. The level is called love. The emotion is reverence. The life view is that life is benign, non-cancerous, non-debilitating. And the God view is that God is loving. At 540, the level of joy, where there is sadness, let me bring joy, remember. The emotion is serenity, a sense of just being serene in life. The life view is that life is complete. I am complete. And the God view is that all is one. All is one. At 600, the level of peace, The emotion is bliss. So it's not just serenity, but it's bliss, which is that wonderful, great, good feeling, continuous. Life view, life is not only complete, it is perfect. And the God view, all being. And finally, enlightenment, between 700 and 1,000. The emotion that goes with the sense of enlightenment is what he calls the ineffable. Ineffable. Life view, everything is. There's no judgment. And the God view, self. The self is God.
Gratitude is your expression of acknowledging the oneness of the universal energy working in cooperation with your desires. Let's look at the nature of gratitude. Gratitude is the complete and full response of the human heart to everything in the universe. It is the absence of feeling alienated or separate. It represents our full acknowledgement and appreciation of the energy flowing through all things and brings gifts to us in the form of the fulfillment of our desires. Gratitude recognizes that nothing is to be taken for granted, and, most important, it is an expression of complete, unconditional love in the form of a thank you to the God force that is in all things. It is a way of being one with the God force in full inner serenity. It recognizes that the spirit within ourselves is the same as that which sustains all life on the planet. Gratitude then represents the whole of ourselves. When we feel grateful and give thanks, sending out this kind of loving energy to the world in the same fashion that we did when we were asking for our heart's desire to be manifested, we feel complete. Gratitude allows us to feel more connected to that for which we are grateful. Gratitude acknowledges that we are the recipients of the generosity of others, of life, and of the universal spirit. Gratitude contributes a loving response to the whole of creation and to your relationships with creation. That relationship illustrates for us how interconnected and interdependent everything is, including the manifestations in our lives. When we understand the nature of gratitude, we can more clearly identify those things within ourselves that are obstacles to practicing gratitude. Gratitude is an inner process. It is an attitude of thankfulness, even when things do not appear as we would prefer. Rumi once wrote, "Don't grieve for what doesn't come. Some things that don't happen keep disasters from happening." Gratitude is a way of experiencing the world with love rather than judgment. The three most common obstacles to an attitude of gratitude originate in your mental processes. The first is simply called fault-finding. You always have the choice to be love-finding or fault-finding. The fault-finder focuses on what is wrong and what is missing. That focus shows up as criticism, judgment, and anger. The feeling is of being against the manifestations that appear in the world rather than being for what one receives. As we think, so shall we be. If you are using your mind to think about what is wrong and what is lacking, this is precisely what will manifest for you. Finding fault, rather than being grateful and being a love finder, guarantees that you will not be able to participate in the co-creation of your life and the fulfillment of your desires. A second obstacle to an attitude of gratitude is called simply complaining. The complainer always feels shortchanged and deprived and consequently becomes envious and bitter toward those who seem to have been blessed with what is missing in his or her own life. The inner experience of complaining leads to being angry at the universal source that seems to have denied you the benefit of its infinite supply. Complaining is an expression of the absence of love in your inner world. When you feel love, there's no room for being upset with God for not delivering your ego's demands. And the third obstacle to an attitude of gratitude is taking what you have for granted. Taking things and people in your life for granted drains you of the joy that you could be experiencing. Taking things for granted means going through life unaware of the multitude of gifts that are here in each and every moment. Think of the activities and experiences that would be missed if they suddenly disappeared. Remind yourself that there are no ordinary moments. Kicking a ball around with a child, watching the shape of the clouds in the early morning, or hearing the sounds of the seasons, saying goodnight to a loved one. Every single experience is an opportunity to experience gratitude, or its opposite, ennui. It is also a choice. Strive to be alert to being a love finder. Sleepwalking through life is a choice to impede the gratitude that is necessary for you to become a manifester. If you take everything for granted, you will never be able to see the clues that will give you the impetus to take action on your desired manifestation. The appearance of the right person or the unexpected gift will be greeted with a shrug and a disinterest, which will prevent you from receiving its blessings. Be awake and fully appreciative of everything and everyone. And here appreciation and depreciation need to be understood. When we depreciate something, we devalue or diminish its worth. We depreciate things or people by expressing disapproval or dislike. It is impossible to feel grateful for something or someone we do not value. Begin to see things and people as they truly are. Each person is a child of God. See the unfolding of God in each person you meet. The moment you participate in the depreciation process, you block your ability to experience gratitude, and consequently, you obstruct your ability to manifest prosperity, love, and joy into your life. Essentially, the activity of depreciation means that you are not sensing the beauty of life. Become an appreciator, and therefore a manifester, by seeing the Christ shining back at you in the other person or groups of people. Cultivating an attitude of gratitude is something we all want to work on in this manifesting process. Make the shift to being grateful for all that you are and all that you have, and you will facilitate your ability to manifest into your life the essence of all that you desire. Develop an awareness of yourself as a recipient rather than as a victim. Be thankful and avoid complaining as much as possible. Catch yourself as you are about to find fault with someone or some condition. Then, instead, find something to say that reflects a willingness to be a love finder. Give yourself a specific period of time to practice avoiding complaining and fault-finding, perhaps 30 days. You will experience the emptying of rancor and complaints from your inner self and the opening to love, appreciation, and gratitude. Begin each and every day with an expression of gratitude and thanksgiving. Every morning when you awake, you have been given the gift of a sunrise and 24 hours to live. Take in a deep breath and be grateful for this exhilarating experience of breathing in life and love. End your day with an expression of love and a repetition of the word for peace, shalom. Be aware of the need to be grateful for the suffering and struggles that are part of the fabric of your life. Sometimes it's easy to simply be angry at your suffering rather than to know that it is the catalyst for your searching and awakening. And also remember, it is the nature of thought to increase. The more your thoughts are centered on what is missing, the more deficient you feel and the more complaints you will utter. Similarly, the more you practice gratitude, the more you are thankful and appreciative of all that life provides, and the more you feed your experience of abundance and love. Thank you, God. I see you working in my life, and I acknowledge with love my appreciation for all that you bring to me.
In a wonderful, wonderful novel called Shibumi, which I recommend to you if you haven't read it, a man who operates at this high level, Nikolai, is in a cell, and he's been kept there for 3 years and is in solitary confinement because he's trying to be controlled by the authorities in Japan. And when he is taken out, this American knocks on his prison cell after 3 years of having total solitary confinement and says to him, "We have an assignment for you. We have something that we would like you to do for us, for the CIA. And you better take it because opportunity doesn't knock twice. What we're going to do is offer you your freedom." And he said to him something very significant. He said, "What you offer me is my liberty. I have my freedom. I've always had my freedom. You can never take that away from me. And these are my conditions for doing what I want. And I'm going back to my cell, and unless you're willing to meet them," he said, "I'd appreciate it when you come back tomorrow and knock on my cell that you knock twice so that I don't confuse you with opportunity." It's the kind of line that you always want to have, and you think of it 4 days later. But when you're writing a novel, you can put it right in there just like that. But that the corner of freedom that people have is the ability, and this is what he was saying, to use his mind in the most creative and personal way that he wanted to. And in place of knowledge, people in our culture somehow have achievement. It's almost an irony when we look at, for example, what do we mean by a college education? See, college education, we purchase credits. I mean, you do it, and you put down money, and you buy a certain number of credits, and then you go through a certain number of rules. And it has nothing to do with knowledge. None of it has anything to do with knowledge. or what you're learning, what it means to you, how it applies in your life, has nothing to do with that. It has to do with, how do I fit into this system? How do I please that authority figure up there called a teacher? And what do I do? And how many pages do I write? And when is it due? And how many books do I have to read? It's a system that has nothing to do with knowledge. And yet we somehow confuse it. We think that you can purchase knowledge. And you can't, obviously. But there's another kind of freedom other than just the freedom to express yourself and the freedom to vote and things like that. And that's the freedom that comes from knowing how to really enjoy your own life and all that your life is. And this is a freedom that can never be taken away from you, even in the worst of circumstances, even by putting you into a jail cell. You can't take that away. It's the knowing, that's a key word. It's the knowing of having control over your own mind. Knowing that. It isn't just that you read it or you listen to me say it or whatever, but that you develop this powerful awareness that I truly am in charge of all that I am as a human being. And like once you get that knowingness, that it isn't circumstances and that it isn't the terrible things in life or the things that we've judged to be terrible that make our lives what they are or what they are not. It is how we process them. It is thinking that makes it so, as Shakespeare said. Then freedom is yours. It's yours to use at any time that you want to use it. Happiness and enjoyment are not things that you get out of life. They're not rewards that come to you. They're not something that is going to be the result of you behaving in a certain way or living a certain lifestyle. Happiness and enjoyment are inner processes, and they are what you bring to life. They are yours, and yours alone, to have at any time that you want to have them. And no matter what the circumstance that you can think of, no matter how bad it may seem for you, you always have this corner of freedom to choose to process it the way that you want to. And I mean, I've seen examples of this kind of thing. I mean, I've seen the extreme examples of people who have put their minds into a place where they're capable of having a pin put right through their arm and not experience any pain. I've seen hundreds of people walk across hot burning coals and experience no burning of the flesh whatsoever. And you think to yourself, well, wait a minute, when flesh is put to burning coals, you get burnt flesh. That's just the physical laws of the universe. And yet it's not. I've seen people overcome just unbelievable fears that you would think that no one else could do, and do it all through this exquisite power of the mind, of your thoughts. And so happiness, or fulfillment, or enjoyment, or whatever, if you get nothing else, get this really clear for yourself, that they have nothing to do with the circumstances of your life. It's not relevant. It's not even an issue that you ought to be bringing up. Over and over you'll hear, yeah, it's easy for you to say that you can be happy because, and then they'll list all the reasons why somebody else can, and then to come up with, these are all the reasons why I can't be happy. And this list will be very, very long indeed. Never ever once saying, well, the reason that I am not happy is because I don't bring happiness to what I'm doing. It's because I'm looking for happiness as some external thing that is going to come to me. It's like what Ike says, there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. And happiness is the way is something that some people have all of their lives. It's something that I have had as long as I can remember, and it's the thing that I can remember my mother tells me about when I was an infant, when I was just like 2 years old, before we were moved away for a while, and when we came back, and throughout all of my teen years and so on, that I was always someone who knew how to make other people laugh and how to enjoy life, and would always look at the bright side of things rather than the negative side.
What has come to become really clear to me in the last few years of my life is that there really are two selves within each and every one of us. Muktananda called the ego, the part of us that has edge got out, EGO, edge got out. the false self. And the false self is this part of us that is not authentic. It is the ego. This false self is the part of us that is always trying to win, trying to own things, trying to prove itself. We send our kids off to school and we tell them, be ahead of everybody else, win, no matter what, and so on. And they have a tendency to believe that who they are these bodies, even though the body they're in is going to change and you'll never be able to find it again. And then there's within each and every one of us a higher self. And this higher self is really the soul. It's really the spirit. It's really God. But these two selves are sort of constantly they're not at war so much with each other, but there's this battleground that we have within us. I'll give you an example of it in my own life. Somebody on the internet, a guy named Watkins, has put out a list, because there's lists for everything. The 100 most spiritually influential people alive. And they put out this list, 100 people. And they rank from number 1 to 100. And I'm on the list. I'm one of the, thank you. Not only am I on the list, but I am, according to this list, and they've got all this criteria of how you get on this list, I am the third most spiritually influential person alive. How about that, huh? So the spiritual part of myself, my soul, the higher place within myself, says to me, this is not relevant. You're not any better than anybody else just because somebody has put you on a list. In fact, you shouldn't even know about that list. And perhaps the people who are most spiritually influential aren't even on that list and don't even want to be on that list because they don't care about those kind of rankings and comparisons and so on. But then there's the ego over here that says, what do you mean number 3? Well, what's going on with that? And who are these people who are more spiritually influential than you? And how are you going to take them down? So there's this sort of constant thing about it shouldn't make any difference. Who I am is the same as everyone else. We all come from the same place, and we all return back to the same place. But then the ego says, let's see, the 2 people ahead of me on this list, one of them is Eckhart Tolle, but he had Oprah. And she's only number 8 on the list anyway. And he got on there every week, and that's not fair. And then there's the Dalai Lama. And I figure Eckhart and I maybe can get together and take the Dalai Lama out of this thing. Or maybe I should align with the Dalai Lama. And anyway, the ego is doing this number on us. But there's also the part of us that is divine. And this is the place that I'm addressing here in this program. There's a quote from Joel Goldsmith. Joel wrote so many great books. A Parenthesis in Eternity was one of them. And this is what Joel said. He said, then there are those who reach a stage in which they realize the futility of this constant striving and struggling for the things that perish, things which after they are obtained prove to be shadows. It is at this stage that some persons turn from this seeking for things in the outer realm to a seeking for them from God. And that's who you tuned into today on this program. I have left this pursuing things and money and fame and winning and being better than others. It's taken me a while, but it has been a powerful journey. As a matter of fact, I had said to my ex-wife, I said, can you imagine? Did you ever in your wildest dreams Could you ever have imagined that you would be married to the third most spiritually influential person alive? And she said, she said, they didn't call me when they made that list. And she said also, she said, I don't want to upset you, dear, but you're not in my wildest dreams. I said, well, all right. So moving to this higher place is really understanding that in the second chapter of Wishes Fulfilled, I call it the higher self. And it gets defined very specifically by this great Bulgarian teacher. His name was Omram Mikhail Ivanov. And he was teaching what's called the initiatic sciences. And I have had his teachings show up in my life in a very powerful way. I've studied his writing. I've listened to many of his recorded lectures that took place back in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And I brought a quote of his that I'd like to share with you. Our higher self is perfect, omniscient, and almighty, a fragment of God himself, a pure, transparent, luminous quintessence. I love that. I love great writing like that. And that within each and every one of us, there is a place inside of each and every one of us that is all-knowing, that is almighty, that is actually a fragment of God. He then went on to say, the Creator has planted within every creature a fragment of himself, a spark, a spirit of the same nature of himself. And thanks to this spirit, every creature can become a creator. And this means that instead of always waiting for their needs to be satisfied by some external source, human beings can absolutely work inwardly by means of their own thoughts, their own will, and their own spirit to obtain nourishing, healing elements that they need. This is why he said to all of us, the teaching I bring to you is of the Spirit, of the Creator, and not of matter. A spark that is in each and every one of us.
I'd like you to imagine the following scene. You're in your house. You've got your car keys in your hand. The lights go out. Power failure. You can't see a thing. You stumble around in your living room and you drop your keys. And you look around for a moment and you realize that you're never going to find them in the dark. But you look outside and you notice that the street lights are on. So in your mind, a light bulb goes off. I'm not going to sit around here in the dark and grope around looking for my keys when there's a light on outside. I'm going to go out here under the street light and I'm going to look for my keys. Why are you laughing? This makes a lot of sense. So you're out here and you're groping around and you're looking for your keys and you're looking and your neighbor comes along and says, what happened, Wayne? Well, I dropped my keys. Oh, I'll help you look for them. And the two of us are now down here looking for our keys. And looking, finally he says to me, excuse me, but where did you drop your keys? Well, I dropped them in the house. He said, you mean to tell me that you dropped your keys in the house and you're looking for them out here in the street light? Doesn't make any sense. And I said, well, it doesn't make any sense to grope around in the dark when there's light out here. Now you laugh and you think how silly that is, but isn't that exactly what we do when we have a problem, a difficulty, a struggle that is located inside and we're looking for the solution outside, someplace outside of ourselves?
If you were raised on blame, it is a habit for you to reach for this excuse whenever you wish to explain why something is not working in your life. You can, for instance, blame lack of prosperity on a lot of externals: your culture, the stock market, politicians, your parents, lady luck, the greed of others. You can blame illness on heredity and the flu season and bad luck or the environment. Your sour relationships can be blamed on your partners, their inability to love you, your upbringing, or your parents. Your personality can be blamed on your parents, or your genes, or your childhood, or your siblings, or your birth order. And your physical appearance can be the fault of genetics, the food manufacturers, advertisers, or the polluted environment. This is potentially an endless list. The alternative to blame is self-responsibility, becoming an inner-directed person. You may not have been taught to consider taking responsibility for the events of your life. But if you are unwilling to discontinue the blame game, you will be unable to initiate your sacred quest. When you are inclined to think that someone else is responsible for your circumstances, take an instant to say a prayer of thanks for the lesson. The lesson is to become aware that you are the one who is experiencing the feeling. You can do this the instant that you recognize yourself playing the blame game. Feel thankful toward those you've let anger you. Give inner thanks for the reminder that the feeling you are experiencing is inside you, not outside you. Say to yourself, I do not want to be right. I want to know the truth. I want my higher self to rule. No one is to blame for how I am feeling. It is my feeling, and I respect that. These kinds of affirmations will lead you to self-reliance and to the way of the sacred quest. Your spiritual soul will then become the guiding light for the remainder of your time in the now here.
We are in the midst of enormous individual and global change. I believe that all of us who are living at this time chose to be here, to be a part of these changes, to bring about change, and to transform the world from the old way of life to a more loving and peaceful existence. In the Piscean age, we looked out there for our Savior. Save me, please take care of me. Now we are moving into the Aquarian age, and we are learning to go within to find our Savior. We are the power we have been seeking. We are in charge of our lives. If you are not willing to love yourself today, then you are not going to love yourself tomorrow. Because whatever excuse you have today, you'll still have tomorrow. Maybe you'll have the same excuse 20 years from now, and even leave this lifetime holding on to the same excuse. Today is the day you can love yourself totally with no expectations. I want to help create a world where it is safe for us to love each other, where we can express who we are and be loved and accepted by the people around us without judgment, criticism, or prejudice. Loving begins at home. The Bible says, love thy neighbor as thyself. Far too often we forget the last couple of words, as thyself. We really can't love anyone out there unless the love starts inside us.